Hi, Amber. Thank you so much for coming on Thrival Nutrition Podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing amazing. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, recording day after 4th of July. So
Right.
we're up and at 'em. Can you introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Sure. So I'm Amber Peterson, and I am a health and wellness coach. I'm trained in functional medicine coaching as well as intuitive eating. And I've been working in that field. I'm coaching on various levels for about 10 years. But I found my love in helping people on the emotional side of eating because I realized there's so many triggers that come from food and our relationship with food and how to make a good relationship out of it.
Yes. So Amber is one of my amazing sidekick because this is where I lack. So she fills this void in me with really taking on the emotional side of eating, which I think is fantastic. Because a lot of the times when people struggle with overeating, or just, like you said, have a bad relationship with food, there's always something deeper. And so I just love how Amber helps uncover that. So when you were in your training, what kind of led you into this topic of really being passionate about mindful eating and being aware of the emotional side of it?
Yeah, well, not only working in a clinical setting opened my eyes to a lot of things, but mostly it was my own life too, my own personal experiences where I would make a whole plate of cherry bars, which is my love. And then I would eat half the pan of cherry bars. And so it wasn't a clinical thing where it was, eating disorder, but it really opened my eyes as to, well, what's going on here deeper? And then moving more into health and wellness and understanding how the body works, and then working in a clinical setting and helping a lot of people put them on, a good program, a detailed program, but then seeing some of the struggles that they go through, it really kind of pushed me into that. Let's dig deeper and let's find out why. Why is it they get on this amazing program that's going to fuel their body, heal their body, but then once they're off it, why do they immediately go off to their old ways of eating? And so it just really empowered me with amazing tools to not only change my life, but other people's as well.
Totally. And I think that's one of the scariest things people have when they go into working with a nutritionist or trying out a new plan is they're worried that this isn't a lasting change. They'll gain the weight right back, or they will stumble back in their ways. And how long you've been practicing, do you feel like you see that a lot? Or do you feel when working with a qualified person, the risk of going back to their bad habits is really low?
So what I found is that many people do go back to old habits because they're focusing on the diet and there's a lot of restriction around it. And when there's a lot of restriction, they feel deprived. So then when that restriction is removed from them, then they'll go back to their old eating habits. And a lot of those health issues start to come back over time. And so, so what I like to ask people is, are you just wanting to have a better relationship with food? Or are you really in a place of healing? Do you really want to heal your body? And if that's the case, then yes, there is a certain amount of restriction that needs to happen in order for the body to heal. That is a true thing. We know that scientifically, right? But along with that, it's looking at ways that they can really sustain it and find moderation in all things and really listen and really hone in on what those body cues are.
Yeah. And most of the time, those restrictive diets, what we have with the gut protocol, it's not meant to be a lifelong thing. It's just meant to help trigger that healing and supportive features more than this is all you can have for the rest of your life. I mean, I think anyone would be miserable.
Oh, definitely. So they really have to get in that mindset of right now I'm healing my body, and to really help a client see that it's just a season, because the brain is funny and the brain will play tricks on us and make us think that this restrictive gut protocol healing is going to be for the rest of our life, right? But it's not. And so if we can have the client paint a vision as far as what they do want and what they want to achieve and that best version of themselves, and know that it's just a season, then usually they can move through it. And then when they come to the other side of the gut protocol healing, they feel amazing. I mean, it's so awesome to see how many people heal and how far they come in that time. But then if we can also work on that mindset, then they won't go back to those old habits.
Yeah, definitely. What's your biggest problem that you see with yo-yo dieters?
Yo-yo dieters, again, I think it's because they don't have a vision, for one, as far as what they really want, but it's also that feeling of deprivation.
Yeah.
And so they go back to their old habits. But it's really all about listening to those body cues. What does the body truly need? And people will say, oh, well, right now I'm craving cookies, like I must need cookies. But that's not necessarily the case, because there's so many different types of hunger. And so what I'll do with a client is, help them be able to learn what kind of hunger it is. There can be emotional hunger, there's mouth hunger, there's stomach hunger, hormonal hunger, cellular hunger, and I can go through each of those if you want, but it's really tuning into the body as to what kind of hunger this is.
Nice. Yeah, go into it just a little bit of kind of what each one stands for.
Yeah, sure. So mouth hunger is that stimulation or that need to eat something or taste something. I mean, we all have those cravings for like maybe chips, like crunchy, salty something, right? Or maybe it's the gooey, soft texture of like a nice warm brownie that just kind of like melts in your mouth, right? So our mouth actually has these sensations that crave certain foods and textures. So it's paying attention to that. The second one is stomach hunger. So this is where true hunger comes from, is the stomach kind of empty? Is it gurgling a little bit? Maybe if it gets too far, you feel a little dizzy or lightheaded. We don't want it to go that far, but it's just really paying attention to what those body cues are. And then the third one is hormonal hunger, which we know the ghrelin and leptin, the ghrelin is the hunger hormone and the leptin is a fullness hormone. And so stress can actually have a huge effect on that hunger hormone. And so it's paying attention to stress and how that plays into our hormones. And then the fourth one was the cellular hunger, which that is kind of like a hidden hunger. It's on the cellular level. And Lahana, you probably know this, 85% of America is malnourished. I mean, it's pretty sad to think that here we have all the food in the world and we can eat as much as we want. We have all the access to it, but really we're not getting fueled on that cellular level. And so that's kind of the hidden hunger where we're deficient in vitamins and minerals. And that can show up in a lot of different ways in how our body responds as well. So
yeah, definitely. Because what's the saying? We're overfed and undernourished. Like you said, we eat a lot. Like the standard American eats a ton, but the amount of nutrients they get are so little, and it's so unfortunate. And that's where a lot of the health issues start to come from, is because we're starting to eat these nutrient void foods and they just don't have anything good, but they do fill us up. But on a cellular level, we're still depleted. That's why some people are really amazed when they eat. They're like, when they're eating like just real wholesome foods, it starts to become, I wouldn't say it's not impossible, but it's harder to overeat, because I feel like you start to fill up that cellular hunger because you're actually getting nourished and your cells are getting what they need to function properly, and things kind of start falling in place. Another thing that you said about stress, that's huge. And I think another thing to really target too is sleep. So like I see this all the time when I have a lack of sleep, and it could just be by an hour or 2 hours. I'm so much hungrier the next day than I am if I got my full hour of sleep. And it's just simply because those ghrelin hormones they get off balanced. And honestly, so does our blood sugars and our insulin. Just missing a couple hours of sleep and not getting optimal sleep, though you naturally are a little bit more insulin resistant the next day. And so those all play a role in like hunger and cravings and all that. So yes, it's a huge approach. And that's why you work with someone, so you can like peel back the layers of which ones you need to focus on and what you can do to focus on it. And then I think too, this is a really great question, is like improving someone's relationship with food, because people do have a negative relationship with food. And I think it's because our society is so yo-yo dieters, and we were scared of fats. Now we're scared of carbs, and we're just always scared of something. And I don't think the media helps either with their really hardcore, you eat 3 eggs, you're going to die of heart disease. And to the average person, when they look at that, I feel like that's the beginning of like looking at a food as bad, but it's also not giving them the right information, because they don't know what an observational study is. They don't realize that the study that they were talking about in the news article or whatever it is in the media, where that really means that they're looking at such a tiny part of someone's life, the little eggs that they eat, and then all of a sudden it's correlated to increased risk of heart disease. But they don't look at any other like stress, food, sleep, anything like that. They just say like, oh, they had all like 3 eggs or more. That's exactly what causes heart disease. Oh. But the average person reading that media thing doesn't know that. They weren't trained on that unless you're in the field. And so it starts to create this like really unnecessary, like bad relationship with like the food, because they're just kind of listening to all these different people say like, these are bad and these are good. And it's very confusing. We get a lot of people that are confused.
It is. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because like, this gets me all excited, because because we were born into this world with an innate blueprint and an innate intelligence that will direct us and guide us. And there are so many voices, right? Like the media, family, cultural, environmental type things sending us these messages. And so we lose that ability to really listen to our own unique body intelligence. And so that's part of working with clients and helping them to be able to determine what that is for them, because it's unique to them. And so one thing that we do is to help them lose the label on food, that it's good or bad. And so that's another thing that I would tell a yo-yo dieter or someone who's really wanting to improve their relationship with food, is to look at food objectively. So objectively means looking at it as what the food is. It's like a fact about the food. Well, this food is nutrient dense, for instance. It's good protein, it's, good carbs and good fat, whatever, however you would describe it, just objectively. Because we fall into that trap of labeling a food as bad, and we have an emotion tied to it, which is labeling the food as in a subjective way. And so that would be like, this is my cheat food, or this is my cheat meal. And what happens, the problem there is then we tie an emotion to it, and we feel guilt and we feel shame. And that's where people go back into the cycle of dieting or restriction, because they're looking at food subjectively. And just learning this simple tip of just looking at it as what it is. Oh, this is nutrient dense, or this is not nutrient dense. And making that choice of what you do want to put in your body, of I want to feel fueled and fed. If that is your intention, and that's the consciousness that you're wanting to shoot for, and then you start looking at food objectively, then, oh my goodness, that's so empowering, and it takes away all of the shame and the guilt, and you can quickly make decisions on what you're going to put in your body and what you're not going to put into your body.
I love that. I feel that way with wheat, and I think wheat's a great example, because gluten-free diets are trending, and a lot of people have questions, and wheat is honestly kind of just processed in general to begin with. But when we look at wheat, again, most people don't really know this unless they're like kind of in the health field, or they're like really digging for the information. But wheat is one that, if you look at it, like you said, objectively, and while I may agree with more of a wheat-free diet, if you look at it and say, this is wheat, the nutrients are pretty void because it's been so processed and it's been so changed in the past. I mean, when Jesus broke bread kind of thing, that wheat back in that day is so different from what we have now. But if you look at it, and what the studies are showing, that, like even if you're not celiac, so you're not allergic to it, or you don't even have to be sensitive to it, but what it does, like the gut changes it makes when you consume it is not usually good. It activates zonulin, activates those, I like to call them the gates in our gut, and allows things inside of our body that shouldn't be. So when I look at wheat, I look at it and I'm like, I know what it does. And it's never usually something positive, even if you're okay with it. Is it worth it to me in this second if I'm at a wedding and I want to have a piece of wedding cake? Most of the time, if it's at a special occasion, I'm like, yes, it's totally worth it. I want to join in on this celebration, and I'll take a digestive enzyme. But outside of that, like when I am shopping, bringing things into my home, I look at the bread aisle. Is it worth it to have a huge loaf in my house? More likely, I guess, to like, eat it throughout the day because I bought it. And then I just, no, it's not, because there's so much more nutrient dense options I'd rather have, because we are aiming for like that, having and fulfilling that cellular hunger. And then like making that decision. And that's really easy for me because I know like it's not the most nutrient dense. It's not going to, probably move me towards preventing chronic diseases. So I don't really want it. But in those special occasions, or like pizza, my kid's birthday, yeah, it's worth it in that season.
Right. Yeah. And so, and that brings up a whole nother, idea or conversation as far as, well, how do we navigate social situations? Because that's how we connect as a species, as a community, as a society, is we connect with gatherings, and obviously there's going to be some play foods there. And so how can we navigate these special occasions? And so again, it goes back to making that choice. Like you've made that choice that I want to feel, fed and fueled, and I want to put the right things into my body. And so going into these social situations, you can have a plan ahead of time. It could be the plan of maybe taking your own little treat, whether it's something that works really well with your body, making that ahead of time and bringing it for other people to share. Maybe it's eating a salad before you go, or bringing in your own salad. Another good tip is just staying away from the dessert table and maybe just socializing in another room and just focusing more on connecting with people instead of focusing on the food. Because I think a lot of times, I know like with my kids, if there's an event that they're going to, guess what? It's not about maybe the person's birthday. It's like not necessarily about the person. It's about the cake and the ice cream and all the candy.
Yes.
And the sugar. It's like, oh, mom, I'm going to get all this amazing stuff. So if we can just change our mindset about these amazing events are for us to gather together as a people and connect wholeheartedly. And the food is just kind of like on the side, right? Then it helps us be able to focus more on what really matters.
It's so funny because as a parent that plans like the parties, like that is huge. You've got to get a cool cake most of the time. I mean, most of the time it's not healthy. Or you got to plan out the food. Like that's a huge part of planning a party is the food. Like what food you're gonna have. Yes, it's so funny. So
carrots and celery,
even though we're celebrating our daughter's birthday, we're looking forward to that. Like we're so infatuated with the food side. Even like when I brought soccer snacks to my son's game, it's totally not the cool mom because I didn't bring the goldfish, I brought the oranges, but we're there with the game. Like the soccer game is the ordeal, but then like the kids are like snacks. Like basically I'm playing soccer for the snack afterwards. Sometimes that's what it feels like.
Right.
I think another point that you made earlier too, and I did with like wheat, is the cheat meal, the amount of what people have. I think, it's okay for, special occasions, occasionally that you eat stuff that you usually don't eat. I get that. Be prepared to not feel good. That's why I say, is it worth it? Is it worth it not be feeling bloated tomorrow and not feeling good? And, definitely you would be taking a step back in your health, I'm sure, goals in one way. But I think the whole like once a week cheat meal type thing, if you look at it from a bigger perspective, you're still kind of eating those foods 4 times a month. And then it's really consistent. So when people think, okay, well, it's kind of hard on Instagram because you see all these bodybuilders and they all have abs and they're all eating like whole pizzas and stuff. And they do it once a week and whatever. But just, I guess, a reminder, you don't know what's going on inside. And I almost can guarantee you the inside of their body, their outside looks great, but their inside is wreaking havoc.
Right.
So I think too, that I like to remind people that when you're deciding on if a food is worth it in that moment, you have I only try to aim for maybe once or twice a month. But if you start doing like a weekly thing, it adds up. It's a weekly thing. It's 4 times a month. And it's still kind of a part of your diet at that point. It's not a special occasion anymore. It's, I eat this every week.
Right. And that's the thing, there's definitely a process going through change, right? Helping someone to change, that is such a huge process. And so if they're, say, having one cheat meal a week, well, and you eat really well all the rest of the week, that's amazing. Like, we will totally, like, as a coach, like, we totally look at progress, right? But really, like you said, looking at that cellular level, we want to move that a little bit further out so that there are longer runs without these, types of foods that harm the body rather than heal the body. And so one thing that I like to stress with the clients too is for one, how do they feel after, and what are, like, physically, how do they feel? Are you going to pay for it later, like you said? And two, what are the emotions around it? Like, do you feel guilt afterwards when you have that cheat meal? Is there still this little voice in your head that says, oh, like, I still just didn't, like, reach where my expectations were or whatever? And so it's really having this mindset of this no all or nothing thinking. And it's like, you know what? I had some, and that's okay. I'm going to be able to move forward, and I'm going to keep eating healthy, and I'll be fine. Because what happens is, and I know, especially as women, and if we just like have one slip, then what the mind does is,
It's all over.
It's all over. Like, then I'm going to have the rest of this pizza, or, wow, I took one bite of this chocolate cake, then I'm going to have to finish the whole chocolate cake or the rest of the piece, And so it's this huge, like, black or white thinking. And so it's really, the part of mindful eating is really having a lot of self-compassion and really, like, being our own coach and talking ourselves through these experiences and extending that self-compassion of, oh yeah, I slipped up and it's okay, but I'm going to be able to make really good choices and, put foods in me that are, those really high nutrient dense foods, and I'm going to get through this. So that's another tip. If somebody feels like they're trying to make the change and they keep slipping and they going back, that extending self-compassion can go a long way.
Yeah. Another thing too that I think is really important that I see a lot is working with clients, and their downfall is the weekends. So they're really good all week. They're working, they're on schedule. But then when they start getting invites out with their friends to go to a bar or whatnot, I think too is, I'm not telling you to change your friends, maybe you should, but definitely trying to be more of an influence in your friends and say, well, instead of going to a bar, let's go to like a farm to table restaurant, and they have like healthier drinks, like True Food Kitchen, which is amazing. Really just trying to lead that, but also just not putting yourself in that position and just saying no. So if you're trying to stop alcohol, don't agree to go, even though you might FOMO a little bit and you feel like everyone's having fun and I'm not. But it is, one second, not the smartest idea to be saying yes to that when you're trying to not have alcohol, for an example. So you have to make sure that you're just not putting yourself in a position of failing, basically.
Yeah, because it's all about owning our food environment. So, and I love that terminology, own it, like own your food environment. And that means maybe making a suggestion to friends, like as far as like places to go out to eat, right? Like other healthy options. And we are most like the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And so if we're wanting to really up our health, then we may very well just need to take a look around as far as who we're surrounding ourselves with and what are their habits like, and what are they, how much are they drinking? How much, play foods are they eating in a time? Because no doubt their choices influence us and our choices can influence them. And so we can really have a good impact on them as well. So it's about having a plan. And especially since weekends are hard for people, having a plan ahead of time will go a long ways.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Especially when you have like your goals in mind and you really want to stick to them. And I like how you said sometimes with making a vision, I think that helps a ton, but also looking past weight loss too. I know a lot of the time women come to us and they're like, I just want to lose weight, but stubborn weight is almost always a symptom. And it's just more so of like, well, what else imbalances do you have in your body? And sometimes it's not just weight, but the internal, like less brain fog, more energy, things like that are so much more powerful of a goal than simply just losing a couple pounds and stuff. So I think creating that vision too, like you said, is helps you get through those times, and kind of control your day and what you do, no matter what day it is, weekday, weekend, whatever it is.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Awesome. So I would love for you to share a little bit about where people can find you. And of course, I'll fill in the spot if you want to work with Amber because she's amazing. Go to thrivalnutrition.com and make sure that you send us a message and fill out the form on our Work With Us page. And we would love to hear from you on that end. But outside of that, where can you be found, Amber? Are you anywhere on social media? I know you're kind of a little bit more quieter on social.
Because I really try to be mindful, right? I teach people mindfulness. I do try to limit my social media, but you can find me on Amber Peterson Coaching on Facebook. I do have an Amber Peterson Coaching Facebook page. And two, the other thing is with Thrival Nutrition, we really focus on upping people's nutrition levels, their health through certain programs. Now, if you feel like you don't have a lot of health issues, but really you want to develop a better relationship with food, I can still coach you through Thrival Nutrition. So if that's something that you're really wanting to focus more on the psychological aspect and the emotional aspect instead of more of like the gut healing aspect, then definitely send us a message in Thrival.
Yeah, there's a little box on our form on the Work With Me page of like, what are your goals? I hear like, I'm really stressed. I need adrenal help or gut help or hormone help or chronic fatigue. Just make sure you put like just better relationship with food, and I know exactly who to send you to.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Amber, so much for coming on today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks, Lahana.